I've been working on more designs for my postal service from the previous video, one which exists in the same world as the nest egg. Designing the other variations of heralds was a priority for me since I had their rough look and colour palette figured out. I knew there was going to be at least 3 different variations of heralds which are utilised based on specific tasks. The stronger heralds taking care of voluminous, heavier deliveries, whilst the medium and smaller heralds take care of lighter items and deliveries, the smallest variations sometimes only needing to deliver a single letter. Designing their uniforms was a fun process for me. A lot of the shape language and patterning draws inspiration from items such as stampers, letterboxes, and letters themselves, the triangular shape of the letterfold being present throughout the design. I really liked the warm red mixed with the complementary hints of blue. It's a much warmer design overall than what I had previously. I feel I definitely had the main structure of the design figured out, so now I'm just left refining and editing what I've already decided on. In particular, I'm still exploring different variation of the hats to get that right balance of the rest of the uniform. I'm thinking of also sketching out different wing visual variations for them, especially for the smaller herald. A thought I had was to make the wings rotate like a helicopter almost, but I'm not 100% certain on that yet. Creating this first character sheet showing them all lined up together was a great bit of progress. I really want to further explore more of their personality and character. Even though a main part of their character is that they aren't exactly sentient, I feel that they would still have different personality traits, or even different ways of doing their jobs. For example, whilst the 2 larger variations of heralds don't actually fly, with their wings almost being more decorative, although I am thinking that they could potentially fly if absolutely necessary, the smaller variation does usually fly since they are only needed for quick, small deliveries and won't have that much to carry. Even though they are not as strong and won't be able to carry out larger deliveries, they would be a lot more energetic and quicker in their movements since they would be expected to cross vast distances in a short amount of time. Of course, sometimes there might be a big delivery to be completed, and if only a small herald variation is available, they would use the carrier I started thumbnailing in the previous video, a type of floating cloud pulled along by a cloud-like creature. The other variations of heralds would use a carrier as well if there was a package or item that was just too big to carry. I loved the idea that these creatures wear the same hats as the heralds, as well as the cloaks. It just feels like a very important part of their visual design, and it links these cloud creatures to the postal service nicely. The main inspiration for the design was a seahorse. At first I was just going to have a regular horse mixed with the cloud visuals, but I thought a seahorse or a hippocampus type creature was more fun and they can swim through the air like how clouds float across the sky. I feel this works well because a useful ability I'm thinking of these creatures having is that, like the smaller heralds, they can float above the ground and are able to pull along deliveries too big for the heralds to handle. Even though it'd be more of a sort of hovering, I'd imagine that they'd be able to gain some altitude and speed if absolutely necessary, but perhaps not for long, especially if the load is heavy, so it's something the herald on duty will have to assess and tailor their journey to. For example, the majority of their journey might be over flat ground, but then at a certain point there was also a massive steep hill or a chasm they would have to pass through. They would want to save the cloud carrier's energy for that section of the journey, so we'll need to know the route and have it mapped out. Another concept I had thumbnailed previously was about the cloud carrier being stored in stamps. I always loved looking at illustrated stamps, and I'm thinking it would be fun to have this as being where they reside while not in use. I'm also thinking this could potentially be where the heralds are kept as well until they are required, or it's more that they have reserves in place for when they are required. I'm thinking this would need to have some kind of limitation to them, perhaps only so many can be out at one time, or there's only a finite amount of them. Having loads of stamps would require an additional place of storage as well, and the first thing that popped into my head was thinking how stamp collectors house their stamps in album books. This also begins to ask the question of, does anyone actually oversee this album book? Is it the same person who runs the postal service and oversees the heralds, since something or someone would be needing to take care of these stamps? I have a few ideas I'm throwing around, but I'll need to explore that avenue a little further in future. Overall, I'm feeling that I have a more solidified design for these creatures. There are still edits I want to make and refinement needed. I also still need to come up with some names and titles for all these characters, which I have written down, but I want to build up the rest of the postal service before I finalise it. I'm really looking forward to creating more designs for the cloud carrier and the heralds using it, maybe start to explore what kind of items and letters they have to deliver. Drawing up the character sheets to figure out more about these characters is going to be a focus for me on the next video. This video was a great opportunity to ask further questions to myself about the postal service and how it functions, as well as practicing my character design and visual styles, which I experimented a bit with in this video. There's a big checklist of props and world building for this postal service, so I'm excited to get more uncovered for the next video.